All right, guys, lesson 3 is 8-11, which is called Introduce Volume Formulas, but you actually learned that yesterday. So basically, the formula for volume is length times width times height. And in your three-dimensional shape, that would kind of look like length, and then width, and then height. Okay, so that's kind of the way, or what we're going to talk about a little bit today. And let's start first by humoring our SAB journal by letting them walk us through that process. So this says, what is the volume of this rectangular prism? So let's just solve it in any way we can think of so far. I'm going to just, since it's got cubes, I might count this very first face, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And it's got 9 cubes right here in the front. And then there are 4 groups of those 9. So that would just be 4 times 9, which is 36. So the answer here is that this has a volume of 36 cubic units, because we don't actually know what it's measuring in, okay? So then it says, how do you find the area of a rectangle? So if you remember that, we talked about that yesterday. That's if you just did length times width. And then it says, how do you find the volume of a rectangular prism? Well, that's when we're going to do length times width times height, okay? And then it says, how is finding volume different from finding area? Basically, what I want you just to write down is that this one is a three-dimensional shape. So because it's a three-dimensional shape, there's one more thing to multiply. So I just wrote it for you on the other side of the page, but this is basically length times width times height is the formula for finding any rectangular, any rectangular prism, okay? So something else to kind of piggyback on this right here, though. Do you see here when we very first solved this guy, I showed you that there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 cubes. What you actually did is you figured out what 3 times 3 was without even realizing it. So we could call this the base of our shape, meaning that we already solved for what your area of one of them was, and then you used that to find the rest. So if this was the area, which was 3 by 3, which would be 9, we could then do 9 times 1, 2, 3, 4 rows, right? Or we could even do it like this. This face is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And so there's 12 of these. And then how many rows of these 12? There's 1, 2, 3. So something to keep in mind, that 4 times 9 is 36, but that 12 times 3 is also 36. So that worked either way. And basically what you did is you found a base, which is length times width, basically. And then you also multiplied that then by the height of it. So a little bit tricky, but that might come handy for you a little later on. So this says, this ice cube is shaped like a cube. Its edge lengths are 2 centimeters. So what is the volume of this cube? Well, that would just be 2 times 2 times 2. Now you got to be careful. I bet your first thought is that this is 6, and 6 would be wrong. Okay, so first of all, we have to do 2 times 2, which is 4. And then what's 4 times 2? That would equal 8. So the volume of this cube is 8 cubic centimeters. I'll write it like that today. And we just did our 3 sides multiplied together. So we did side times side times side. Okay? All right, so let's look down, or this is at the bottom of your page. Part of our work today is actually going to be to find something that we have an unknown about. So for example, Raul is building a planter in the shape of a rectangular prism. It has a length of 4 feet. It has a height of 2 feet. And then it says, how wide should it be to hold 24 cubic feet of soil? So that's telling us that this inside number altogether, we want it to hold 24 cubic feet, right? Well, I can solve that. The part that I'm missing is I need to solve for my height. So that basically means my length was 4, my width was 2, my height is the unknown, and all together it's going to equal 24 cubic feet, right? Well, the way you solve this first, you're going to solve off to the side. So what's 4 times 2? That's 8. So I now know that 8 times my height will equal 24 cubic feet. Oops, cubic feet. So I have a couple options. First of all, this is a pretty easy multiplication problem. My guess is you already know what the answer could be for the height. And that is that 8 times what equals 24. But the other way to think about it is the way to get rid of a multiplication problem is to divide by both sides. So if I were to divide by 8, I basically just cross these two out. I eliminate them or cancel them from the side. And then on this other side, I could then divide this side by 8. So what's 24 divided by 8? That's 3. So the way to figure this one out is that my height is actually going to be 3 feet tall. We could double check that right now. 4 times 2 times 3, if I thought that 3 was my length times width times height. Well, 4 times 2 is 8, and 8 times 3 is indeed 24 cubic feet. Oops, cubic feet. Okay, so that's going to be kind of our work today. We're going to solve for some unknowns. So 8 through 10 want you to do just some practice. It says write a numerical expression for the volume, then calculate the volume. What they mean by a numerical expression is basically what is your formula, or what's the numbers in your formula. So for this one, this would be a length of 2, a width of 4, and a height of 3. So that would be 2 times 4 times 3. And we literally just did that problem. That one is 24 cubic feet, because that's 2 times 4 is 8, and 8 times 3 is 24. Okay. For this next one, it says our expression is going to be 2 inches by 5 inches by 6 inches. And again, it doesn't really matter what order you do it in. So I'm going to eliminate the first two big ones. 6 times 5 is 30, and 2 groups of 30 is 60. So this would be 60 cubic inches. I'll write that one that way. And then lastly, this one is 5 by 10 by 5. I'm going to do my 5 times 5, which is 25. And then I know that anything I multiply by 10 just has a 0 on the end. So that should be 250. And this one I will write down as cubic centimeters. Okay, so now let's get into some of these more tricky ones. For 11 through 13, they want you to find out whatever is unknown here. Okay, so we're going to figure out some unknowns. For example, on number 11, we already know the volume. The volume is 120 cubic meters. We know the length. We know it's 4 meters. We don't know the width, and we know the height. So that means that my length times my unknown width, I'm going to circle that, and then times my height should equal 120 cubic meters altogether. So here's what we talked about earlier. First thing you want to do is multiply your 4 times 5, which is 20. So they're telling you that 20 times whatever this unknown number is going to equal 120 altogether. So one way we can do that, if I divide this side by 20, that's the opposite of multiplying 20, so those two will cancel each other out. And then 120 divided by 20, well, you can just cross out those two zeros, and 12 divided by 2 is 6. So then that means that my width should equal 6 meters altogether. And again, we can double check that to make sure that actually works. 4 times 6 times 5, right? It should equal 120. Well, let's test. What's 4 times 5? That's 20. And what's 20 times 6? 120. So I know I did that right. I'm going to erase that so I have more room here for the next one. This says my volume, again, is 120 cubic inches, so I already know what it equals. I do not know my length, so my length is the unknown here, but I know that my width is 4, and I know that my height is 3. So whatever times 4 times 3 is going to equal 120. So first, you multiply 4 times 3, which is 12. So my length times 12 should equal 120. Well, I'm not even going to solve any further. I hope you guys recognize right away probably what your answer is. What times 12 is going to equal 120? Well, that should just be 10. So that means then that my answer here is 10 inches. And just to check to be sure, 10 times 4 is 40, and 40 times 3 is 120. So I did that right. And now for number 13, this one's not too bad because you're just solving for your volume, and you already know how to do that. You do your length times your width times your height, so that's going to be 7 times 6 times 7, and that will equal your unknown volume. The hardest part about this one is just that it's a big problem to solve. So 7 times 7 is 49, So let's do 49, and then that's supposed to be times 6. Okay, so 6 times 9 is 54. So I'll bring down my 4, carry my 5. 6 times 4 is 24, and 24 plus 5 is 29. So this answer altogether should be 294 cubic centimeters. The last thing we'll do together are 3 word problems. It looks like it wants us to write an equation before we solve. So a box shaped like a rectangular prism is 2 meters long, 2 meters wide, and 3 meters tall. So 2 by 2 by 3. So what's the volume of the box? Well, that should be very easy. 2 times 2 is 4, and 4 times 3 is 12. So my volume equals 12 cubic meters. Something along those lines. Okay, so for number 15, it says Fred's dog crate is 42 inches long, 24 inches wide, and has a height of 30 inches. So what is the volume of the crate? So that's going to equal the volume. So again, this isn't necessarily hard, it's just got really big multiplication numbers to solve. So let's do the hardest ones first. Let's do 42 times 24. 4 times 2 is 8, nothing to carry. 4 times 4 is 16, place value holder. 2 times 2 is 4, and 2 times 4 is 8. So if we add those together, we get, let's see, 1008. And now I'm going to take that 1008 and I'm going to multiply it by 30. Well, the beauty of that is that this 0 just comes down to be my place value holder, and now I can just move straight on to the 3. So 3 times 8 is 24, carry the 2. 3 times 0 is 0, but 0 plus 2 is 2, so we need to bring that 2 down. Then I'm going to have 3 times 0 is 0, and 3 times 1 is 3. So that answer altogether would be 30,240. So the volume is 30,240, and I am measuring in inches. So this would be in inches cubed, something like that. All right, last problem. It says the cargo hold of a truck has a height of 3 yards and is 5 yards wide. The volume of the cargo hold is listed as 240 cubic yards. So what is the length? So the length is the number that I'm missing. So we're going to solve for the unknown here. Let's just first do 3 times 5, which will equal 15. So 15 times my length is going to equal 240. So like we talked about earlier, the opposite of multiplying by 15 is to divide by 15. So that's what we're going to do to both sides. So I now need to come over here to the side because I definitely don't know the answer to that off the top of my head. And could be hard, but first you can see that this actually goes in pretty easily. 15 goes into 24 only one time. So we'll subtract 15. 14 minus 5 is 9. So now I just need to figure out how many times 15 will go into 90. Well, I know that 2 groups of 15 is 30. So that would be 2 groups of 15 is 30. 4 groups of 15 is 60. And then 6 groups of 15 should be 90. But let me check. So I'm going to do 15 times 6 to check here. 6 times 5 is 30. Carry the 3. 6 times 1 is 6 plus 3 is 90. So that's perfect. So that means then that 15 went into 90 6 times. Minus 90 means I have no leftover. So that then tells me that my length should be exactly 16 yards. All right. To show your work today, SAB is not an option. We did all those together. Homework and remembering would be fine. IXL would also be totally fine. Just make sure you get some practice in.